So let's talk about the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets are a team which have recently started a semi of a rebuild. They are a team which have uh, been building themselves up from the ground, and now we're getting to the point where they have completely, formed at least their starting five out of rookies and out of developmental players, and let's talk about them. The Rockets are a team which have been consistently one of the teams which is interesting in the league. Originally they were bad at the start of the 2010s, but then as stuff started turning around for them, uh, it turned out that they managed to get James Harden. This was one of the biggest moves of all time, as they traded James Harden and they got him from the OKC Thunder. So, yeah. And this caused the Houston Rockets to have a star. Over the next few years, they built around Harden. They made their whole franchise based off of him. And now, really, they've gone into the period after. Harden, there got to a point in 2020 where he realized that he couldn't win with the Rockets because of the way they constructed their lineups and other reasons. So he said, "Yo, I want to leave." And that basically caused him to be hated and, heavily sought after by the league. And the Rockets managed to get a good return for such a superstar, which was James Harden. They sent him to the Brooklyn Nets, and there James Harden actually got to, play with other superstars, and he thought that he was going to compete for a championship. And the Rockets managed to get a lot of assets from him. What the Rockets did at this point was they were just like, okay, we're going to be trash and we're going to keep talking to teams, trying to make trades, trying to get rid of our good players, and we're going to rebuild and tank for star young players through the draft. So now their rebuild has consisted of a lot of things, but really it is centered around Jalen Green. Jalen Green was drafted second. He's like Scoot Henderson in the sense of they were drafted second only because there was another guy at first which looked way better than them, right? Because in his draft, Jalen Green was drafted behind Cade Cunningham, which was just, they were both guards, but Cade was bigger, played defense, whatever. Now, they've got some pieces, and the Rockets look like they're about to get into the next step of their rebuild. The Rockets have already had their superstar, right? Then they go and they got some complementary stars around them, like Albert Shengun, which is a young player who they also want to build around. They've gotten players like Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore in this year's draft. And now, finally, they got the last piece, which was Amen Thompson, which was a point guard who can actually distribute. And now they move Kevin Porter Jr. to the bench, and so the team can run smoothly and whatever. In my opinion, right now, the team looks phenomenal when it comes to the young players. But what we really need to look at for the Rockets is the vets. Because even though they are a young team who is rebuilding, what they did this offseason confused me, but I also liked it. What they did was that they signed a bunch of veteran players. They signed Jock Landale, they signed Dylan Brooks, they signed Fred VanVleet. Those are the three major signings. Now, the reason why I think that they did this was to not have to worry about cap space. These are three players which, even if you don't want them, they're going to be positives and you're going to be able to trade them for something in the future. And in my opinion, I just believe that they didn't want to deal with the league because you have to spend your cap. You don't have to go over it, but you have to spend a certain percentage of the cap space. And in my opinion, what we really need to say and look at is, okay, you guys brought these players in, but why did you bring them in? because obviously there's a reason. In my opinion, what I see the reason as, and what I see that the Houston Rockets are doing, is that they're bringing in older players so that their stars can have vets who to look to. The Houston Rockets have had problems in recent years with veteran players and having a team full of young guys without vets, and that has caused them to have extreme fights and make a lot of bad decisions in terms of on the court, coaching outside of the court with the Jalen Green video that came out of where he was engaging in sexual acts but clothed, right, with another teammate of his, which got traded with Josh Christopher, etc. And in my opinion, the vets that they brought in are going to help the Rockets, push past that and be able to teach their young guys. This is good because every team needs vets and every young player needs an older player to tell them how to play. The NBA is a league, and the NBA has historical players. They have phenomenal players. They have a lot of esteem. And when you have this team like the Rockets, which for the past few years have been called the AAU Rockets, or the Rockets which have no skill, or they've been called a plethora of things, you have to look at them and be like, well, I mean, it would be better for them to have vets and for them to have someone to be, there taking their spot and really showing them how to play, right? Like, none of those guys in the Houston Rockets are vets yet. They haven't been in the NBA. They haven't done anything for the league, if we're being honest, as they've only been there for 1 to 2 years. But what we really need to look at in terms of the Rockets now is how much do these vets push them for the future. I feel like Jock Lawndale is a good vet to have for Auburn Shingun. He's a guy who's been in the playoffs, been effective, and he's not in over his head. I feel like there's guys in the league which think that they're the best player of all time. It's like, and they won't be. And in my opinion, that's a flaw. And even though confidence is good, there is confidence which can hurt you. So, in my opinion, I like Jock Lawndale. I also like Dylan Brooks because Dylan Brooks is going to show these guys toughness. He's going to show these guys how to play. The only thing I don't know is why do you bring in Fred? Like, I understand that he's a champion, that he's going to show these guys how to play. Like, I understand, but what do you expect from these vets? Do you want them to reform your franchise? Do you want them to just teach your young guys, or do you want them to actually play real minutes and contribute to winning games? These are all questions which I have because honestly, all of these guys got locked up to multi-year deals, and that causes them to be in a position of, well, if when we have all these guys have such long year deals and have such expensive contracts, do we really want them to play, or are we just bringing them in for a bigger purpose? In my opinion, that's the biggest question with the Rockets. That's what we need to look at. But also, what we need to look at is what is the future of them? Like, do we actually think that this team could win a championship in the future? Right? Is Jalen Green a star number one? Is Amen Thompson a good enough point guard? Is Alper Şengün a good enough center? And in my opinion, all these things you have to look at and be like, well, we don't know, but I would, if I'm the Rockets, I'm putting trust in my guys. Because even if, they don't look like that, they don't look like they could actually win you a championship, this is the best shot the Rockets have had at having a young core and having developmental pieces for the future. Alper Şengün looks phenomenal. Jalen Green there's a lot of upside there. And Amen Thompson looks like a basketball god, right, when it comes to his mind. So in my opinion, you build around the score and you see what happens. I honestly like the Houston Rockets and what they've done, and I believe that they will be an exciting team next season.